Hello everyone, and welcome back to another session of Bloodborne PvP and another weapon showcase. This time I am using the Saw Spear, which is a weapon you can get very early on in the game. Now, this is a relatively common weapon, although it's debatable on whether we see this one or the Saw Cleaver more frequently. Really, it is kind of hard to tell the difference between the two when most people only use them in the first form. But more on that later. For now, let's get started. The Saw Spear requires 7 strength and 7 strength and 8 skill in order to use. It has a D scaling in strength, a C in skill, and a C in arcane. Its physical base damage is 170, and for me, with average blood gems, my attack rating is 460. Now, this weapon, like the Saw Cleaver, has an identical moveset to it in the first form. They are completely the same in the first form. Now, that's a good thing. That's a really good thing, because their first form moveset is really strong, really powerful, and really fast, and that is one of the reasons why this weapon is so common. Now, the first form, its R1s are fast, wide-sweeping R1s. Its R2s have a decent speed to them, and they are more of an angled slash. They are, of course, slower than the standard R1. Now, the first form charged R2, it's got a 1.9 times damage multiplier. That actually is 0.2 times higher than a Saw Cleaver. You will do more damage with a charged R2 with this than with the other. So, you know, that's good, I suppose. Now, the second form, which I personally enjoy more, it's a lot more fun, in my opinion. It's got more variety to its attacks. It's got thrusting attacks as well, which is quite nice. And it's got a really long reach to it, which is, of course, a very good thing. The R1s, they start with a wide swing from the right to the left, and they leave your left side open, and then it's followed by an overhead swing, which still leaves your left side open. So you, if you're fighting it, just need to go onto your opponent's left side, and they'll miss you. Quite frequently, actually, so bit of a strat right there to keep in mind. Also, the R2 attack, it's a thrust with decent speed when it's uncharged, and it's got a really fair bit of range to it. When it is fully charged, you actually have less range, and it's a thrust into the ground, which is a tad bit awkward in all honesty. So there's that. Now, the damage multipliers on those two attacks, the uncharged is a 1.34 times damage multiplier, and the fully charged is a 1.75. So, take from that what you will. Now, with this weapon, there are a few different ways that you can go about using it. You can go and use it like most people use the Saw Spear and Saw Cleaver, which is stay to the first form exclusively and spam R1. You can spam R1 with this weapon all day long. You will deal a fair bit of damage, and that's all well and good, but it ends up being a tad bit predictable. Another way you can use this weapon is transform attacks for days. Just dash in, transform attack, transform attack, transform attack, just keep going back and forth with it. And that's another very common thing that people do, because the transform attacks on this weapon are very powerful, and they have a good bit of reach to them. Same goes for the Saw Cleaver, but yeah. So there's that. Now what I actually like to do with it is I prefer to stay in the second form. I like it more, it's got more variety to it, and it's just overall more enjoyable in my opinion. I like the charged R2s, I like the running R1s, how they are a running thrust. That can be used to cover a lot of distance quite quickly, and people don't always necessarily expect to be hit by that thrust because they don't expect it to have such a long reach, which is, you know, bad for them, good for me. Also, with the second form, if someone does go and try and hug your left side while you're attacking with your R1s, just do a back step and then do an R2. Chances are that will get them off you and it will work out just fine. So, another little bit of a strat. Now, as far as baits with this weapon are concerned, you can go in your first form, do a dashing R1 attack into a transform attack. The extra reach can catch people off guard, especially if you do a few dashing R1s followed by a little R1 spam beforehand, because they'll expect you to continue doing the same thing and they'll dodge backwards. So in this case, when you do the transform attack after the R1 and they have dodged backwards, then they'll get hit because you'll have a farther range and they won't be expecting it. It's a good strat, it works well enough, and it is what it is. So that's really all I've got as far as the baits for this weapon are concerned. It's pretty much standard. There's really nothing terribly special about it. I mean, you can turn around, unlock, run away, charge up an R2 attack, and turn around with the charged R2. But that's a standard thing. It's not really anything unique to the weapon, so I don't really think it's something worth going into extreme detail amount. Although there isn't really a lot of detail you can go into with that, so hey, you know. Now, as far as the cons of this weapon, in the first form, it's a tad bit short. That's really all I've got. It's a little bit short. That's the only issue I can see with it. Speed is decent enough, damage is decent enough, and stamina consumption, I guess, is just fine. I mean, you can spam with this thing for a long period of time, so I'd say that's pretty decent. So, short is really the only thing that the first form has going against it. The second form, as I mentioned earlier, with your R1s, your left side it's kind of exposed, so watch out for that. Also, another way that I did forget to mention earlier, if they are trying to hug your left side when you're in your second form, do a transform attack to go back to the first form and you'll be fine because you'll end up hitting them. So there's that as well. Overall, it's a pretty good weapon. It's one of the more common ones that we see, although it's honestly kind of hard to tell if people are using a saw spear or a saw cleaver in a lot of cases because their first forms, I mean, they look pretty much the same. They have the same moveset, and a lot of people just R1 spam with it. But, I mean, you can R1 spam so hard with it that you'll win. And I think this fight's actually an example of that, so it is what it is. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, found it helpful in one way or another. I actually do want to take this brief little bit of time and mention the fact that I did start a Patreon, so if that's anything you're interested in, check that out. If not, well, just ignore it. No pressure. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, found it helpful, and I will see you all next time.